Anytime. Anytime at all.
Anytime you're ready.
In a serene village, the Clemens brothers, Emmett, Frank, and Rufus, target the local bank under the cover of night. While the staff slumber at the nearby station, they carry out their robbery. A teller triggers the alarm, rousing the guards. Rufus fatally wounds the man, and his brothers dispatch the rest. Amidst the chaos, Emmett unintentionally takes Rufus's horse, sparking irritation. Frank sustains a leg injury during their escape. Pursued, they race through fields and seek refuge at a horse ranch. Hungry and weary, Emmett opts to pilfer food and fresh horses, while Frank advocates restraint. Rufus dissents, but Emmett sides with Frank, quashing Rufus's objections. Unexpectedly, they encounter Jim Calder, the ranch owner, who greets them warily. He permits them to rest their horse, but meets his demise at Rufus's hand. Enraged by Rufus's impulsiveness, Emmett orders him to cook in their victim's home. Inside, he encounters Jim's wife, Honey, and alerts his brothers. Honey defends herself, but is subdued. Enticed by her, the brothers spend the day with her. Drunkenly, they depart the next morning, leaving the house ablaze. She buries her husband and takes his gun. Encountering Thomas Price at an abandoned well, Hani initially mistrusts him. Thomas disarms her but earns a blow to the head. Investigating his belongings, Hani discovers a corpse on one of his horses. She decides to learn from him and trains with his gun. Thomas warns her against vengeance and departs. Hani, offering herself in exchange, follows him persistently. Feeling compassion for the woman, he offers her a hat and a water skin before departing once more. Despite his efforts, the determined woman tracks him down and catches up when he sets up camp later that day. Thomas spends the night watching over Hanny as she sleeps. When she awakens from nightmares, he consoles her. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Emmett tends to Frank's wounded leg as they rest in the wilderness. Back with Thomas and Hanny, he outfits her with spare clothing and plans to take her to Mexico to procure a firearm. They journey together until reaching a town, where Hanny learns the truth about her husband's killers from the sheriff. Thomas gambles in the saloon while Hanny converses with the sheriff, causing a stir among the patrons when she mentions Thomas's name. Recognizing his identity, Thomas acts swiftly, dispatching a man who poses a threat. He then presents the body to the sheriff for the bounty. Despite initial skepticism, the sheriff pays up, acknowledging Thomas's reputation. They continue their journey with Thomas revealing their plan to meet Bailey, a gunmaker in Mexico. As Bailey crafts a weapon for Hanny, Thomas begins her training. When Bailey detects Thomas's growing affection for Hanny, Thomas remains oblivious. After days of training and crafting, Bailey tests the gun he made. He later presents Hanny with her customized gun, emphasizing its use. Thomas instructs her on its proper handling before they practice shooting together. Days later, Hanny observes Thomas with Bailey's children, prompting a reflection on Thomas's dual nature. Their peace is shattered when bandits attack, prompting Thomas and Hanny to defend the home. After the skirmish, the surviving bandits flee. Meanwhile, the brothers' attempts at robbery meet with failure, leading to their escape. Bailey bids farewell to his friends as they depart. Upon reaching a town where the brothers are headed, Thomas discourages Hanny from seeking revenge, but she remains resolute, leaving Hanny in tears. Thomas exits the hotel, but stops upon seeing the Clemens brothers arriving. He watches as the brothers continue bickering about having no funds. Emmett and Rufus then head to the saloon while Frank gets a haircut. This allows Thomas to confront the latter alone. Catching him off guard, the bounty hunter orders him to disarm before presenting him with his own wanted poster. Frank has $100 on his head, so Thomas invites him to head to the sheriff's office peacefully. Just then, Emmett and Rufus exit the saloon and spot the two. Immediately, Emmett raises a weapon to throw at the bounty hunter, but Thomas quickly draws his firearm and fires. Emmett throws the weapon before dodging the bullet, striking the bounty hunter in the stomach. This allows the brothers to escape. Having heard the gunshot, Hanny looks out her window and spots Thomas collapsing. She rushes to his aid. They take him back to her hotel room to let him rest. He warns that the brothers will harm her, so in his dying breath, he asks her to promise not to come after them anymore. Before she can answer, the man dies, and Hanny can only mourn him. She soon heads to the saloon where she asks the bartender where the Clemens brothers are. The man answers that he only knows where Frank is, and he's upstairs in one of their rooms. Hanny immediately heads upstairs and breaks into Frank's room, where she finds him with a companion. Despite having the advantage that he's weaponless, the woman decides to make it a fair fight and tosses him back his gun belt. The two face each other at a standoff, and Hanny manages to draw her weapon and shoot first. Still, Frank wounds her shoulder. Anger fuels Hanny, so she shoots again, sending Frank crashing out the window to his doom. Soon, this town's sheriff hands Hanny the reward for killing Frank while having her wound tended. The man then warns her about Frank's brothers learning about what she did, but the woman remains unfazed. After Frank is buried, his brothers visit his grave. Emmett is seething in rage and wants to seek revenge immediately. Noticing diggers nearby, Rufus soon reports that a woman paid the diggers to prepare 2 more graves. Knowing that this is the same woman who killed Frank, Emmett concludes that she's still in town. Back in town, a recovering Hanny enjoys her reward and purchases some perfume. However, Rufus passes by and recognizes her. He quickly confronts her with a weapon, but Hanny shows no fear. Rufus mocks her by recounting the time they spent at her old home. He then orders her to go with him to Emmett, so they can enjoy her company again before harming her. In one swift motion, Hanny fires the weapon she hid in her arm sling and shoots down Rufus, ending him. But this time, she leaves enough money for 2 funerals. Certain that Emmett will soon join his brothers. Recognizing how dangerous her desire for revenge is, the sheriff orders her to leave town before innocent people get involved. Enraged, Hanny tells him to send Emmett to the nearby abandoned prison so she can settle their battle without bothering anyone. As she leaves, the sheriff comments that she's a tough woman. Emmett learns about Rufus's death and that Hanny is leaving money for their funeral, so he takes a portion of his supposed funeral money and makes his way to the prison. Emmett later arrives at the prison as, seeing the place quiet and empty, he searches the area with his weapon ready. Suddenly, a weapon is fired from afar but misses the fugitive. Hanny is hidden somewhere in the facility, so Emmett continues searching for her. He climbs to the guard posts and looks around, eventually noticing a shadow moving in the distance. Assuming this is his enemies, he goes in that direction and successfully finds Hanny, who's still oblivious to his location. Instead of his weapon, he quietly takes a knife from his jacket and aims to throw it at her. Another weapon is fired, sending Emmett's knife flying away. The preacher appears from behind one of the beams, having just saved Hanny's life from the man behind her. After that, the preacher puts his weapon away, as if urging the two to settle their duel fairly. Hanny puts her weapon in its holster, waiting for Emmett to position as well. However, the man laughs at her, finding it amusing that a woman is challenging him. As he does, Hanny recalls everything that Thomas taught her. The moment Emmett's hand reaches for his weapon, she fires hers. As he falls down the steps, Hanny recalls the man's atrocities against her, fueling her to shoot him again, thus finally ending his life and her revenge. The woman heads back to town, carrying Emmett's body to collect her reward as she follows her mentor's footsteps as a bounty hunter.